Well, lads and lasses, the fixtures are finally out, and as you can see here to my right, these are the fixtures right here. And I've got to say, looking at the first game of the season, it is Liverpool at home. Second game of the season, it is Tottenham away. And then, of course, the third game of the season is Bournemouth. Now, looking at these fixtures, once you get past Liverpool, once you get past Tottenham, once you get past Bournemouth, of course, a role as not at Bournemouth this season, it will be, of course, Marco Reus, who was at Dortmund when Newcastle, of course, played them in the Champions League back in the first time we were in the Champions League. But once you get past, of course, them three teams and, of course, Leeds, look at the other teams that are there, look at Hull City, the team that's newly promoted to the Premier League. Coventry City as well in there. Again, a newly promoted team to the Premier League. Yes, these teams are going to want to compete. They're going to want to, prove something. And they're not going to want to go straight back down. But they're not going to have the funding that we have at our disposal. And they're not going to have, of course, that stability that we've got as well. So looking at it, there are some games where you'd expect with picking up the points in them games. Then you look at the game against Aston Villa. It's going to be a tricky one. It is at home, however, so that is a good advantage for us. Then you look at, of course, Palace, which is away at Selhurst Park. We've always had trouble when we play down at Selhurst Park. Everton at St James's Park on the 31st of October as well. And that, again, is going to be a tricky game, even if it is at St James's Park, because it's Everton. We know what they're like. We know what Jordan Pickford's like as well, between the sticks for them. He's always wanting to wind us, Geordie's up, and we always want to wind him up. So that always plays a factor into that game as well. And then you look at November, and it's Fulham away, Arsenal at home, and Brighton away. Now, remember, these fixtures can all change dates. These aren't set in stone, These dates can easily change due to broadcasting rights and other stuff, down the line. But looking at them as they are right now, I'd say it's not the best of starts when you look at, starting against Liverpool at St James's Park. However, there is a caveat to that game in the fact that Kevin Keegan did say he wanted to say goodbye in front of Newcastle United fans on the opening day of the season, and he's been given that wish by the looks of it, yeah. But however, it's with Liverpool now. A lot of people might say, wow, that's brilliant. It gives them a chance to say goodbye to Newcastle United fans and Liverpool fans together at the same time. But we have seen, Keegan has already pretty much said goodbye to the Liverpool fans. I think it was a few years back when he was in Anfield and he was sitting alongside Kenny Dalglish, of course, who is also another person that is going through some bad times at the moment as well. Though I don't want to speak bad of people that are going through bad times, but I've never really been a big fan of Kenny Dalglish. Even if he was a Newcastle United manager, I've never really been a big fan of him, and for reasons in the fact that he came in and he really took apart a really good Newcastle United side, and for that reason, I've just never really taken to Kenny Dalglish as a person or as a manager, or even as a footballer, to be honest. But that's my personal opinion. I still don't want to be disrespectful to people that are, going through some bad things, but I'm not going to say good things about people if I, don't like them to begin with. I'm not going to come on here and be a hypocrite and, be the, oh, what a nice guy sort of thing. At the end of the day, might be a nice guy. I've never met the guy, but at the end of the day, that's just, my opinion. And everybody's entitled to their own. But anyway, going off topic, back to the fixtures. Of course, Kevin Keegan is hopefully going to get his chance now to say goodbye properly to Newcastle United fans at St James's Park. And it's fully deserved. You know, Keegan's done a lot for Newcastle United over the years as an ambassador for the club on and off the pitch, as well as a player and as a manager for the club. And, you know, just getting that moment for Kevin Keegan to be able to say goodbye to the fans properly, like we're seeing Sir Bobby be able to do, you know, not that long before he, you know, passed away. That's not to say Kevin Keegan's passing away anytime soon. Hopefully not. You know, at the end of the day, I hope Keegan lives for a very long time, gets to see a lot of brilliant years for Newcastle United under these owners. But looking at these fixtures, and back on topic of looking at the fixtures, we see, of course, the first derby game against Sunderland. That is, of course, going to be on the 5th of December, and it is a home game this time around instead of it being an away game. By the time we get to that point in the fixture schedule, you know, Sunderland's going to be well into their European games by that point. So that is going to play a massive factor in the games, in my opinion. And looking at the other games, you know, I think other than that Liverpool start, the Tottenham game, you know, and then a few games in that December period where we see the likes of Man United and Man City. And then, of course, there's that Brentford trip as well down to their ground where it hasn't been the greatest ground for neither over the past few seasons. And then you look at other games around as well. You know, it's not a bad list, but it is a bit of a nightmare start having to start the season with Liverpool and Tottenham. And then, of course, the games against Bournemouth and Leeds as well. Leeds as well at Elland Road. It's again another ground where we haven't really done all that great, to be honest. But there's a lot of time yet left for the transfer window. There's a lot of time yet left to be able to bring in the players that we need to be able to push up. And like I say, them fixtures that you've just seen on screen, of course, these fixtures right here, they're not set in stone. These fixture dates can change and a lot can play into the fixtures as well, because there's a lot of teams playing in Europe out of them fixtures as well, the likes of Liverpool, you've got Sunderland, you've got, you know, Aston Villa in there, you've got Man United. I believe that's in there as well. And then, you know, you've got the likes of City in there. And, you know, when you play that into it, then that's going to obviously be a massive benefit to us because we don't have European football. So we're literally going to be working off a schedule where we've got one game a week in the league, and then we've got, you know, the cups of the FA Cup and the League Cup, and however far we make it through them, which I'd expect we to do really well in them. We've been pretty much, when you look at it, a cup team of late. We've been doing really well in cup competitions, and the league form last season was no joke. That was really bad. And it is something that has to be fixed going into this season. And I think looking at them fixtures, it's quite obvious that they haven't really been picked by a machine. They've been handpicked at times through them fixtures, especially them first two games, Liverpool and Tottenham. They've definitely been handpicked games there. And, you know, it is what it is at the end of the day. We can only play what's in front of us. Let's see what we can do. And we don't know who we're going to be lining up with, of course, on the 22nd of August neither, because, like I say, there's plenty of time left in the transfer window. In the moment, all we've seen basically is Yuan Juan come in from France as a goalkeeper, and we're still, you know, looking for other players to come in yet. And it looks like, you know, moving away from the fixtures, the few players that are being linked to us at the moment are, of course, none other than the likes of Matias, Fernandez, Pardo, and Ezzalzouli from, of course, Morocco, and Belgium, of course, Pardo, who are being heavily linked to Newcastle United. Mark Douglas, of course, putting this one out, and there is still massive talks surrounding Sandro Tonali. However, Newcastle's sources have dismissed recent speculation linking the midfielder with a move to Tottenham, according to reports from Mark Douglas. The Magpies hierarchy are maintaining a firm 100 million asking price for the Italian midfielder, and furthermore, should a departure materialise, Newcastle's strategies indicate that a replacement will be securely signed before Tonali is permitted to leave to improve the optics of it all. So they're already thinking ahead. They know what they're doing, and let's get behind the owners. Let's trust in what they're doing. And I know it is a bit annoying, but I've seen, Liam Kennedy come out and say it, and I agree with him. If the next piece of agenda from Newcastle United, the next move from Newcastle United is to sell Sandro Tonali and then not bring somebody in straight away, that is not going to be good for us as a fan base. That is going to, set off a whole bunch of people in the fan base, and I'll be rightly pissed at it as well, to be honest, because we've got to go and we've got to get moving with these transfers. And at the moment, I think Ross Wilson's doing really well with how quick he is moving. And like I say, there's a lot of moving parts behind the scenes right now at Newcastle United, a lot of stuff that we're not getting here. One of these being, of course, this whole Sandro Tonali story. And then, of course, these guys here, Fernandez, Pardo, and Ezzalzouli as well. But, at the end of the day, let's get behind the owners. Let's, see what happens. Like I say, there's plenty of time left of this transfer window, so let's not rush. Let's not get skeptical, and let's not, start criticising the board and the Ross Wilson and Suds and everybody like that. Let's get behind the team and let's see what they do in this transfer market, because, like I say, plenty of time left. But let us know your thoughts down in the comments below. What's your thoughts on these fixtures as well? Which ones are you most looking forward to? Are you looking forward to, of course, the game against the Mackems at St James's Park on December? Or are you looking forward to that game at the beginning of the season against Liverpool? Which game is it you're most looking forward to? Let us know down in the comments below. I'll see you all in the next one. Oh, well, a lot.